She has no name. That is the first thing you notice when you go looking for her. Every minor duke from the 1600s has a name. Every colonial administrator of a forgotten province, every regional governor of a territory that lasted 15 years before being absorbed into something larger. They all have names, birth records, correspondence, and portraits. Some have entire academic journals dedicated to cataloging their most forgettable decisions. But she has nothing, not even a denial, just absence. I found her the same way I found most things that do not want to be found, by accident, working through something else entirely. I was cross-referencing administrative seals on official correspondence from the mid-1700s, Tartarian cartographic records, the kind of documents that surface occasionally in estate sales and regional museum storage rooms, having somehow escaped the more thorough archival purges of the 19th century. And on 3 separate documents, recovered from different collections, held in different countries, spanning approximately 40 years, the same sigil appeared. A double eagle beneath a feminine crown, not a masculine crown. The distinction matters enormously in heraldic tradition, and it was never accidental in the 18th century. A feminine crown positioned above the sigil of a sovereign territory indicates a ruling empress, not a regent holding power for an absent male heir, not a consort elevated by marriage. A ruling empress, a woman who held the territory in her own name. I started looking for her name. I did not find it. What I found instead confirmed what I had already begun to suspect, that the silence around her was not an oversight, it was architecture. The official position on female sovereignty in the 18th century is precisely what you would expect. European and Asian monarchies occasionally produced female rulers, like Catherine the Great of Russia or Maria Theresa of Austria. Figures whose power was so deeply embedded in documented European affairs that even the most thorough historical revision could not cleanly remove them. They remain because their stories intersected too many foreign diplomats, too many wars, and too many treaties. Their names are on too many pieces of paper held in too many countries to disappear. But Tartaria operated differently. This is what the mainstream narrative consistently fails to account for. Tartaria's apparent geographic isolation and its vast internally administered territory meant that its relationships with European powers were mediated through intermediaries, trade representatives, and what remains in the official record as indirect references. Letters describing meetings with representatives of the Eastern Throne, diplomatic correspondence referring to the imperial court of the interior, always indirect, always one step removed from a proper name or a personal title. This was partially by design, a deliberate protocol of separation, and that design became extraordinarily useful later when the erasure came, because it left very little that was unambiguous to remove. You cannot destroy what was never directly recorded, and you cannot redact what was always referred to at a careful distance. The most direct evidence comes from maps, not the famous ones you have likely already encountered, though those matter for different reasons. I am referring to a specific category of Eastern European cartography. These were maps produced by Polish, Lithuanian, and Ukrainian cartographers working between the 1720s and the 1760s. These were maps that circulated within Central European scholarly networks but were never widely distributed in Western Europe or Russia. Narrow circulation, limited copies. Exactly the kind of material that survives the purges through obscurity rather than protection. Several of these maps contain marginalia, notes in the cartographer's own hand, observations about the territories being depicted. This was standard practice for the period. Most of the marginalia concerns geographic features, trade routes, or the reliability of the survey data being used. But on at least 4 maps I have examined across different collections, the marginalia contains references to the governing authority of the Tartarian territories that have never been publicly analyzed or discussed. One cartographer, working sometime around 1742 based on paper composition and ink oxidation, wrote in the margin beside the Tartarian interior a phrase that translates roughly from the Latin as, "under the rule of the great Empress whose name is not given to strangers." Under the rule of the great Empress whose name is not given to strangers. That phrase has been sitting in a map archive since the 1740s. It has been examined by catalogers, it has been photographed for institutional records, and it exists in the documented inventory of a European cartographic collection that researchers can access. Yet it has never, in any academic paper I have been able to locate, in any published treatment of Tartarian geography, or in any study of 18th century Central Asian political history, been discussed. It has not been dismissed, it has not been offered an alternative explanation, it has not even been mentioned. That is how the deeper erasure operates. Not by destroying the evidence, but by deciding that the evidence does not require a response, by training entire fields of scholarship to look past certain categories of information as though they are not there. The cartographic note is not hidden, it has simply never been asked about, and in academic history, a question that has never been asked is a question that has been answered in advance. Every time I think I have identified the most compelling piece of evidence, something surfaces that reframes everything I thought I understood. This time, it came from furniture. The oversized furniture appearing in government buildings and estate collections from this period is something I have examined in a different context. Chairs with seat heights nearly double standard dimensions, desks scaled beyond what any normally proportioned human would find workable, beds whose measurements imply occupants of extraordinary stature. The official classification system handles these consistently as decorative ceremonial display pieces, commissioned to project authority rather than to be used by the person displayed. But when you begin mapping the actual locations where these pieces appear, a specific pattern emerges that the decorative explanation cannot account for. The oversized furniture does not distribute evenly across grand ceremonial halls, which is where you would expect decorative pieces to concentrate. It clusters in particular rooms within particular buildings, private offices, receiving chambers, administrative spaces, rooms designed for sustained daily use by a single occupant, not for impressions made on visitors. The scale of the furniture suggests that the occupant was large, significantly, and unambiguously larger than any normal human being. And here's what the official explanation has never been asked to address. Many of these pieces are specifically and unmistakably feminine in their construction and ornamentation. There are embroidery frames built for hands with a span roughly double the average. There are writing desks proportioned for a very tall seated figure, but carrying characteristically feminine design elements in their carved details, their inlays, and the particular curve of the chair back. There are dressing tables too high for any normal woman to use, yet definitively designed for a woman. This is not a large man's furniture. It's something else. It is furniture built for a very large woman, a specific woman, in specific rooms, across multiple buildings in multiple countries, all within the same general period. Why does that distinction matter? Because it matches the sigil, it matches the cartographic marginalia. When you place the feminine crown above the Tartarian eagle, alongside rooms full of oversized feminine furniture in buildings whose official histories make no reference to an occupant like this, the convergence stops being coincidental. Patterns don't repeat across disciplines and continents by accident. I want to tell you about a specific photograph. I will be precise about what it is and what it is not, because precision is everything when the evidence is this fragile. In 1987, an estate auction in Vienna sold a collection of photographic materials that had belonged to a family of former Austro-Hungarian imperial archivists. The family had worked within the imperial bureaucracy for 3 generations. When the last surviving member died, the estate included several trunks of archival materials, photographs, correspondence, and administrative documents, the accumulated working residue of decades of proximity to official record-keeping. The auction house cataloged these items briefly and sold them to various buyers, causing most of the lot to disperse entirely. Among the cabinet cards and cartes de visite was a single image described in the auction catalog as an unknown subject, circa 1865 to 1875, formal portrait, unusual proportions. The chair she is sitting in is what I need you to look at, because the chair is large, not slightly large, but dramatically, unmistakably large for any normally proportioned human being, and she is filling it. She fits the chair the way a normal person